Pag ready na. Nag-ayos pa ako eh.
Sige lang.
3, 2, 1. The lore!
19 books, 11 games, 8
Masyado ba
whole
mahina?
years, all leading to this moment. The ultimate
Masyado ba
Fnaf
mahina?
timeline is finally complete. The
Okay.
pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put
Oh.
the story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back
You know what?
together.
Wait. Isa pa, last lang. Ayusin ko yung ano. Ay, hindi na talaga na-adjust. Hinaan ko sana yung boses mo, pero hala na. Yaman na. Tara.
Okay.
Di tayo
Hello,
Discord
Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all
Game
year. Except here,
Theory.
it's the class project that I've been working
The
on for the past
lore.
decade of my life. This one is big, my friends.
Grabe.
I gotta admit, kind of nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018, back in the days when
Sipin mo
Mike was
ito.
the crying
Alam mo
child.
kasi,
After
nakikita
coming
ko to
back was
dati
actually
eh,
a
itong
surprise,
YouTuber
and
na to.
Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I
2018
ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did
Nag-aalam
something
ng
like this,
lore.
we had 3
As
more
in,
massive games, the death
sobrang
and
tagal na
revival
yan.
of the Fnaf
Oo.
movie,
Nakita
and
ko din
more
one time
robot
yun eh.
kids than you
Tayo
can shake
laro-laro
your
lang eh,
staff
no?
butt at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated.
The
It is full of
lore!
speculation and theory, so to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk
Okay,
about.
last.
complicated kasi
Lang iya kasi,
the
wait lang.
lore.
Ang lakas talaga ng boses natin. Wait, edit ko na lang to. Ang lakas ng boses natin. Wait, pero nagre-record pa ako ah. Ang lakas talaga ng boses natin, di ko kaya. Nasaan ka ba? Discord. Kaya kitang hinaan dito eh. Try mo magsalita. Salita ka.
The lore!
Isa pa.
Baka mamaya, di naman ako dinig dyan.
Hindi, 85%. Sige, go.
Ha?
Salita ka. Okay, pwede na yan. Tapos lalakasan ko na lang dito. Kunti. Mid.
Yes, sir.
Franchise moving forward.
Yan! Pwede na yan. Mas malakas na yung video konti. Yung baka kasi tayo lang nadidinig eh. Okay, game.
To the future, it's time to reveal my current working Fnaf timeline.
Let's
But just
go.
before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers
Uy,
over
massive.
any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of Fnaf really boils
Imbis na
down to the
nanonood
story
tayo ng
of one
movie,
man,
no?
William
The
Afton.
lore.
His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form
lore.
later. So sit back, grab some
Ayan.
popcorn,
Oh,
or your
kumain ka daw.
if you're
Oh,
the
yeah.
type to get upset when I say
Kumain.
something controversial,
Kumuha ka
make
daw ng
sure that you
pagkain mo.
subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back
I'm
to a
eating
few
right
times in
now.
order to fully dissect. Without
Ayan,
any
let's
more
go.
waiting, I
Yeah,
present to you
excited
the
daw.
story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Madness.
Fnaf 3.
Our story begins
Oy!
not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the
May gera
throes
pa
of
to,
the
ah.
Great Depression. People were in desperate need of cheap entertainment,
World War
especially
I.
in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, fourth highest unemployment in the nation and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits. A simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon
Ay, may
style for
Fredbear's-
characters at the time.
Ano
He
yan?
resembled cartoons like Mickey
Oh,
Mouse,
may
Felix the
may-
Cat,
may
Betty
cartoon
Boop. It immediately
dati.
said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family.
May
And the
cartoon.
price, honestly,
Daw-
couldn't be beat. For
de,
50
sa-
cents,
Freddy
you get food
Fazbear.
and
Timeline nila may
entertainment as you
cartoon
watch
daw
the
na
local
Five Nights at
trained
Freddy's.
real-life dancing
Ayan,
bear
oh,
perform
ganyan.
on stage. Normally, you only got to see
Tas
dancing
ganyan
bears at
Carnival
large
daw.
traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for
May
about
ganun bang,
$1.
ano, bear?
That's $1 without
Ah.
food. But this
Ano?
was a smaller show, like the type from the Von
May bear ba
Brothers,
talagang may
Robbins
tricks?
Brothers, where tickets would
Yung
sell
show?
for just a
Totoo,
mere
oo.
50
Ay,
cents.
natuturuan
Watching that
kasi
bear
sila
do
Kaya nga,
tricks on
natuturuan.
stage brought a glimmer of
Train.
joy at a time when so
Oh.
much
The
was
Freddy
behind.
Fazbear.
The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a
Gagawa ko ng
permanent
part
impression
Ang grabe,
on
tagal
the
na
boy,
nito.
capturing
Gagawa akong
his
part 1, part
imagination in a way
hanggang
that
ano eh.
nothing else had.
Di ba
One
nakita
little
mo may
boy
part 1?
named Billy. That was his nickname at least,
part
but his parents liked to call him William. William Afton. The bear could dance.
Killer.
Could sing.
William.
For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business. But
Naging
he wasn't
killer
the
lang
most
siya
creative.
dahil sa
How do you
ano, no,
make
sa
a singing
talong.
dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes.
Sit
We
na yan.
know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in a security breach, that at least at one point,
Yung
Fred
talong.
Bear was an actual bear. Dancing bear shows
Oy.
were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge
Wow.
of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the singing show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder
Damn.
spree begins. That just
70
doesn't make
siya
a
nun,
lot
no?
of logical sense because he doesn't become
Naging
immortal
mamatay
until his
tao
first
ay.
death in
Whoa.
Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fred
Ba't
Bear's
ganon?
singing show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney.
Oh, may Walt
Throughout the
Disney
50s
din.
and 60s,
May
he
Walt
pioneered
Disney
the use of
din.
mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation?
May Walt
Suits
Disney
with
din.
5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural
Mascots.
arms and hands to interact with the
5 fingers.
guests, as opposed to the older models
Oy,
where the
oy,
arms
banin.
would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fred Bear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons,
Oh,
he
yan
changed
na.
Fred Bear from a realistic brown animal
Yan
to
na.
a cartoonish yellow
Diba,
bear with
ayan,
a purple
ayan na,
hat
yung
and
Fred
bow
Bear
tie.
family
But feeling
diner ba
like
yun?
one character wasn't
Diba?
enough, he added another
Yung as
friend,
in yung
a yellow
pinaka
rabbit with a purple
start
vest
G
and
ng
matching
pinaka
tie
start.
named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fred Bear was
Bonnie the
certainly his
Bunny.
first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was
Diba
his.
Spring
It was an
Bonnie
original
yun?
character that he had created
Spring
from scratch.
Bonnie?
And I do mean scratch. Williams' hand-sewn costumes were rough with
Ah,
seams and
baka
stitches
kasi
visibly showing.
animatronic
It's a
na yun.
handcrafted suit.
Tas
You can see
eto,
the seams
wala
and
pa.
everything.
Like, mascot
It even
pa
has
lang.
5
shit.
fingers for the
Mascot
performer's
pa lang
hand. It is
to.
very much not
Ayun,
a
oh, tingnan mo.
Springtrap suit.
Yung
It was
isa,
something much
Spring
more rudimentary. It came at a
Bonnie.
time
May
before
ano,
animatronics were a part
may
of the story.
bakal.
That's why I
Kaya,
suspect that it was actually
ano.
the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very
Kaya nga
personal
ano,
to
namatay
Afton.
siya.
He
Diba nga
put
yung
his
unang
digital
ano,
consciousness in
mascot
that
lang
form.
sila.
It's his personal avatar.
Pwede
It's
din
the
tayo
way that
mag-pause
he
kapag may
sees
komentary ka.
himself.
May
There's
komentary
also
ka
a
ba?
whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial
Hindi, wala.
killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and
Tuloy
kill
ka.
them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his
Eh.
emotional
Uy, uy, uy.
attachment to it. So while Fred Bear seems
Dream
to
come
have
true
started
daw.
with
Ano, hindi, ano to?
Golden
Si
Bonnie
William
was
Pedo.
uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all.
Pedo
In this
si
whole
William.
franchise,
Dream
only
come
one
true
set of
dahil
characters
dun sa
have themselves
mascot.
5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fred Bear, was a 5-fingered wearable suit
the
at one point in
Nightmares.
the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel. Before he, like everyone else, was turned
Ayun
into
o,
an
ayun
animatronic.
o.
Wearable
It seems
pala
to
yun.
imply that all of the main characters had similar
Ayun na.
wearable mascot outfits
Is that
at least
the
at one
bite of
point in time.
87?
And that
Wala
whoever's
pa.
having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, saw
Ayan.
those mascot suits specifically. Bonnie and Fred Bear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and
na.
inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist
sir.
that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him
Entertaining
throughout the
kids
rest of the
to killing
franchise.
kids.
And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his
Nasaan si
idea
Henry?
and they wanted in. Enter Chica's
Ano,
Party World,
Uy,
a
ano to?
rival restaurant starring performing animal
Chica?
characters. His idea, except they did it better. William
Alam mo ba't mas ano daw, mas
meron?
mas kumita yung ano, chika. De, ano lang to, joke lang to. Mas kumita yung chika dahil kitang-kita mo pa,
Humor.
kitang-kita mo pa lang toy chika, oh. Fan service. Yung toy chika.
Oy. Come your horses.
may have been the first, but
Oy.
obviously he wasn't the best. It
Grabe
hurt
na
the
yan, ah.
prideful William.
Isipin mo yung mga
Adult
lalaking
yun, ah.
bata,
was able to do the
titingin
thing
sa
that he
gilid.
always wanted to do. Make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers
Uy.
in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them
may
able to freely
battery,
turn and talk and
battery.
dance
Ah,
on their own.
animatronics.
No
Ayan,
human
animatronics na
required.
yan.
It was like magic. Magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry.
Hey,
Evelyn.
na.
This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's party world was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo
So,
known to
ibig
ramble
sabihin,
on
parang
and
ano
on.
lang.
That one was more of a
So,
joke
so
for the
parang
parents,
ibig
but it was the
sabihin lang
main-
neto, yung parang ano lang siya, kunyari, McDonald's, tapos may syempre, mangongopya, KFC, pero may twist. Pero
Oo.
mas parang sumikat yung KFC. Kunyari lang, mas sumikat yung KFC kasi mas may mga
Sa
parang,
kanila?
ano sila, ay, may mga parang
Oo.
gimmick sila. Ayun. Okay, gets.
In stage that was for the
Deeper
kids. A
store.
rocking
Ganun naman
band of
lagi.
characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of
Yellow
other
chicken.
Nakakatakot
country-themed
naman
characters,
yung ano.
including a pig with a
Isipin mo
banjo,
ganun.
an upbeat frog from the local swimming
Manonood
hole,
ka
and a
ganyan.
brown bear with a heavy southern accent.
Palaka yun!
Bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding
Bear.
insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fred Bear.
That's gonna leave a mark.
I've suspected that the
Copyright.
mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the
Copyright.
story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster.
May laro niya?
Especially
Meron ba
Ned
yan?
Bear,
Fnaf
which is just
6.
so suspiciously close
Tsaka
to Fred
Ultimate
Bear.
Custom
And yet,
Night.
there are two key details that we're going to have to justify with any
nakakabutan.
mediocre
SL
melodies
ka lang,
mentioned.
no?
One, they're very rudimentary with external battery
SL.
packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And two, we know that
Ala,
at
laos,
minimum,
may battery.
Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself?
But wala
You
siya
would.
dun sa
You would
SB.
be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off, Henry. We've talked extensively
Freddy
about how the
Fazbear?
mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic. So it just
Kaya
has to be
matututunan
him.
na
I
natin
don't think
yung
Henry's
lore.
doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was
Tagal-tagal
likely
nating, ang
building
dami
the
nating,
robots at the orders of someone
naalala
else
mo
that
pa,
was
boy,
running a
yung nanonood time, ay maglalaro tayong FNAF. Tapos, ilalagay mo pa yung app. Kunyari, FNAF 4. Ito na una. Tapos, lalagay mo FNAF.
Okay,
FNAF.
according dun
FNAF
sa
2. Tapos, lalagay mo
theory natin
FNAF
kung ano
1. Tapos,
talaga yung
lalagay mo
original.
FNAF 3. Oh, nakakamiss yung ganun eh. Pero ngayon, ito na yung lore.
Ang hirap talaga i-guess
The original lore.
rival restaurant
go.
franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages: Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I
Ba't
call
ganon?
out the rival restaurant as
Nakakatakot.
being named
Sura
Chica's
kasi,
Party World?
sa atin,
A few
mascots,
things, actually.
sa
First,
kanila,
we know for
Chuck
a
E.
fact
Cheese
that a
robot
location
talaga
named
eh.
Chica's Party World exists. It is
Sa
mentioned
Pinas,
in the source
mascots
code
lang.
teasing
Eh,
sister
McDonald's.
location. So it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit
Kaya nga.
cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story of the Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with the theme of down-home
Manok.
country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided
Kaya
to stuff
pala.
his
Kaya
first
pala.
dead kid into
So, para
Chica.
kapag may
That one was
nangyari,
Henry's creation.
siya yung
His.
ano,
This
yung
dude's
character
jealous
ni Chica
admiration
yung-
turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as
Yo,
families continued to
yan na.
choose Chica's Party World over
Nagagalit na siya.
Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with
Kaya
the
ba yung
appeal of the
Henry
robots.
na
Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt.
Si William?
Oo, kasi ano, si Henry tsaka si William, sila yung mga matatalino naggawa ng, ayun nga, sila Freddy, sila yon. Ayun.
Oo, tapos doon nag-start yung, ano,
Malalaman
ano talaga,
natin,
original
malalaman
na
natin. Di ko pa,
apat.
Only to get
Di ko pa
bailed out
napapanood
by,
to eh.
of course,
Yeah.
Henry Emily. Another insult.
ayan, binayaran,
Another
ayun,
humiliation that
so
William
parang nangyari, binayaran si William para mag-collab. para ano, yung ideas niya din, tsaka idea niya, magko-collab, di ba? Matatalino tong dalawang to eh.
Oh, para mag-merge.
Oo.
Para mag-merge yung ano.
Yung parang ano, parang sa totoong buhay din, yung
Tingnan.
collaborations, di ba?
Wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't
1979.
deny that what
Eh
came
na,
next was a pure
umano na siya sa
massive
libro.
success and expansion.
Umano na
With
siya
the
sa
two
libro.
franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both
Nagko-connect na,
worlds.
nagko-connect
Afton's
na.
Kinoconnect
ideas
niya
with
na.
Henry's robotic
Ayun, oh.
expertise.
Oh.
The two men decided to launch under a new name.
So parang sinabi dito, yung utak ni William, yung mga
Uy!
ideas sa mga ano, sa mga animatronics, kunyari bear, ganyan. Tapos si Henry naman
Oo.
daw siya yung maggagawa, tsaka electric yung magpapabuhay.
No
Bear's
animatronics
Family
na
Diner.
idea.
Gagalaw,
Chain that would
kailangan
eventually
gumalaw.
come to
Oh,
feature a
ganun.
mix of humans in performing
Ayan.
suits
Ayun,
as
oh,
well as
shit.
on-stage
Ayan na.
animatronics.
The
They
OG.
decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering
Yung
the
OG
yellow
na.
bear was easily
Na,
identifiable as
gagalaw-galaw
a
na.
brand because he was the original performing
The
animal
OG.
mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new
Yes,
restaurant
sir.
would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they
What?
even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to
Ah!
magnets.
Ang ganda ng ano, connection.
Ayun pala yun.
So parang yung mga mas dati connected din sa future kasi yung mas dati may parang ano na agad sila merchandise. Ang angas ng connection. Kaya
Pero
pala.
hindi pa na-explain
Oh.
yun sa
Mr.
ano eh.
Angas ang angas.
Ah, mga plot twist eh.
Tingnan
That
mo,
said,
may magnet
not
din
all the
sila. oh.
characters were winners. The reception to some
I got
characters was just
goosebumps.
mediocre. So they faded away into the dumpster, storage
parang
units, and
lumuhos
regular
na,
budget tech stores
lumuhos.
with lost nostalgia,
Ah.
waiting for their chance to step back into the
yung ano.
limelight if and when a headliner went
So,
out of
parang
commission.
binalik lang
Others,
sila
though,
para
would fare
nostalgia,
much better,
ganun.
like a new pirate fox, as well as a
Ayan,
blue
may
guitar-playing
bago.
variant
Yan
of
na.
the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big, it would spawn its
Color
own
blue ba
cartoon
talaga si
show,
Bonnie?
Fredbear and
Oh,
Friends.
masang
Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and
May
Bonnie's
yaman na
popularity
nila.
would be
Ayan na,
so
booming
strong that
na.
they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home
Ayan
to
na.
all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the
Ayan
Pirate,
na,
and of
sinabi niya,
course the
blue.
headliner of Brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was
Blue.
good,
Yes,
and Afton was
sir.
happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in
Wala.
that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for
So
the
may
show.
cartoon,
But other
tas
than
wala
that,
yung
things were
ano
going
niya,
smoothly.
character
He had himself
niya.
a wife, 2 sons, a daughter,
Ayun na, may
and
mga
a
anak
thriving
na.
business. And best of
Mga
all,
anak
he was
niya.
able to learn the
Ayun
craft
na,
of robotics
shit.
from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters
Yung
would
buhok
do.
ko nakataas.
Because it was quick and easy, new characters
Ayun.
introduced into the roster would be given a
Goosebumps.
simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that
Goosebumps.
any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the
Ayan.
first generation of animatronics. But why stop
Sira,
there?
sira.
Afton had big ideas. What if the
sige.
animatronics weren't just locked to the stage but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What
Dahil lang dun sa roaming na yun, yung mga night guard sila yung nai-stress.
Nagkaroon,
Sila yung nai-stress.
nagkaroon ng conflict.
if his
Sila yung
mascot suits
nai-stress.
could
So yung gabi.
become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons?
Ayun na.
Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William
Engineering.
wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that
Speedrunning.
kept pushing
Uy,
him
ikaw yun,
forward was the
engineer.
desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself
Speedrun
smarter
yan.
and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy
ma-pride
was
si
about
William.
to strike.
Ayan na, ayan na.
So, eto, yan, part 1 na yan.
Yan na.
Wait lang.
Tapos na yung
Part
ano.
1. So, magkikita-kita tayo sa part 2. So, yeah, Undominance, peace out.
Yes, sir.